The water ran for 7 hours straight. Not because I forgot. Not because I was cleaning. I just couldn't bring myself to turn it off. I sat on the tile floor, fully clothed, forehead pressed to the cabinet door under the sink. Somewhere around hour 3, I started counting the drops. Not to pass time. I just needed to prove to myself that I was still here. That the walls weren't closing in. That my heart, despite everything, was still beating. Spoiler, it was. Unfortunately. I didn't eat that day. I didn't move much either. Just stared at the crumpled receipt on the floor near the door, the one with his name on it. 2 lattes, 1 almond croissant. Thank you, Orion. Orion. You don't forget a name like that. He sounded like a constellation and ruined my life in broad daylight. I hadn't spoken in 19 hours. My voice had started to feel foreign. My fingers were trembling not from the cold, but from knowing. From the kind of knowing that rots you from the inside out. I didn't cry. I'm not proud of that. I think I would have felt better if I had. But I just sat there like a man who forgot how to be human. The ring was still on the table. Not hers, mine. She took hers off 2 weeks ago. I didn't notice. I was too busy installing shelves in the laundry room because she said it felt unbalanced. God, I was so desperate to keep everything balanced. At 4:11 a.m., I stood up, walked to the closet, took down the go bag I'd packed 2 years ago, just in case. Mina laughed at me for keeping it. You're so dramatic, she'd said. Like the world's gonna end. She had no idea how right she was. I left everything behind. The apartment, the keys, my job, my name, my dentist appointment on Friday. I walked into the night like a man trying to outrun gravity. And for 284 days, I succeeded. No phone, no credit cards, no social media. I worked under the table in a place where no one asked questions and I gave no answers. Then last week, someone left a note under my door. No envelope. Just 5 words, scrawled in handwriting I knew better than my own. Lowell, please, let me explain. And now the walls are moving again. And the water's still running. You never realize how loud silence is until you hear a knock that wasn't supposed to happen. The building I moved into had no buzzers, no working intercom, no front desk. That was the point. You had to know someone to get in, or be stubborn enough to wait for someone else to walk out. She must have waited. In the cold. In the dark. Just breathing through her coat. Practicing whatever lie she thought might work. The knock was soft. Not urgent. The kind of knock that says, I know you're in there, and I'm going to keep doing this until you prove it. I didn't answer. I stood perfectly still, back against the fridge, holding my breath like a child who thinks hiding is the same thing as being safe. She didn't knock again. Instead, she slid another note under the door. This one said, I don't need you to talk. I just need you to listen. Please. I wanted to rip it in half. Burn it. Swallow the ashes. But I just stared at it. Like maybe if I glared hard enough, the paper would catch fire on its own. It didn't. Instead, I started remembering things I'd buried under days and distance. Like the sound she made when she lied. It wasn't the words, it was the space between them. A pause just slightly too long, like she was buffering, rewriting, editing. When she said, I love you, she used to blink too much. When she said, he's just a friend, she never blinked at all. I didn't sleep that night. Again, I sat with my back to the door, the note still in my hand, the apartment dim except for the buzzing fridge and one overhead light that flickered like it had a nervous tick. Around 5:23 a.m., I heard something even worse than the knock. Laughter. Hers. Muffled. Far away. But hers. Somewhere outside, echoing off the brick and steel of this anonymous city block. I knew that laugh like I knew my own heartbeat. It was the same laugh she used when she got away with something. I looked through the peephole, even though I knew she wasn't there anymore. And that's when I saw it. A single red tulip. Lying at the base of the door. Face up. Like a dare. We planted tulips once, the spring after we moved in together. She hated them. Said they were too delicate to bother with. But I loved them. And she pretended to love them, too. Just like she pretended to love me. That flower wasn't random. It was a message. She'd found me. And worse, she wanted me to know. The tulip disappeared by morning. I didn't move it. I didn't touch it. I stared at it for hours, thinking if I blinked, it might vanish like a hallucination. But when the sky began to shift from bruised purple to that sick, early morning orange, I opened the door, and it was gone. In its place was a paper coffee cup. No logo. Just white. Lid slightly off-center. still warm. I hadn't ordered coffee. I hadn't opened the door. I hadn't let anyone in. And yet, there it was. I didn't pick it up. I crouched down like it might explode, like it might whisper something I couldn't unhear. And then I noticed the smallest thing, a lipstick stain. Subtle, almost like an accident. But I recognized it instantly, because I'd cleaned it off my own mugs for years. Mina always applied lipstick right before leaving. She never fixed it once she was out. Said it was supposed to fade naturally, like it was telling a story. I hated how poetic she made her damage sound. I left the cup where it was and called in sick to work, not that anyone would notice. The gas station was a halfway point between people's real lives. I was just the shadow behind the glass. No one knew my name. That was the goal. But now someone did. By noon, I'd convinced myself it was a prank. Coincidence. Delusion. Maybe it wasn't even lipstick. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe the past year had rewired my brain, and I was just unraveling. But then I got the envelope. It was under my pillow. That was the moment the fear turned real. I hadn't left the apartment. I hadn't unlocked the door. I had 2 deadbolts and a sliding bar. I checked them every night. 3 times. But the envelope, thick, sealed, my name written in her handwriting, was under my pillow. Not on the table. Not outside. Under my head. Inside was a photo. Not of her. Not of me. Not even of us. It was a picture of the hallway outside my apartment, taken from inside my apartment. The angle was impossible. Like it had been taken from where I was standing right now. I dropped it. I don't remember falling, but I do remember the sound my head made when it hit the kitchen floor. It was dull. Heavy. Like regret. I woke up an hour later, still on the tile, a line of dried saliva glued to my cheek. The lights were off. The picture was gone. The coffee cup was gone. The door was still locked. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. A broken kind of laugh, like a cracked instrument that only plays one note now. Because suddenly I understood, she wasn't trying to talk to me. She was trying to unmake me. I didn't go outside for 3 days after the photo. The apartment shrank by the hour. The walls seemed closer. The light had a tint to it, a kind of greenish filter that made my skin look sick when I passed the mirror. I avoided my reflection. Not out of fear, out of embarrassment. I looked like a man who'd let a ghost rearrange his furniture and call it love. I stopped using the front door, pushed the couch against it, moved the dresser, too, built a barricade like I was preparing for a war no one else could see. And maybe I was. I kept the lights dim, sat on the floor, ate dry crackers and peanut butter with my fingers like a man trying to forget what silverware meant. I showered once, just long enough to feel human again, but when I stepped out, there was a folded napkin on the sink. It was from the diner we used to go to. Had the same faded blue stripes. The same scratchy texture. On the napkin was a message written in black marker. Remember the orchard? That's all it said. No signature. No threats. No accusations. Just that one sentence. And that's what undid me. Because no one knew about the orchard. Not really. It wasn't a place we talked about. It wasn't somewhere we took pictures or posted stories. It wasn't even a date. It was an accident. A detour. A weird, silent afternoon where we pulled over on the side of a rural highway because she said she smelled apples. She walked into the trees without waiting for me, kicked off her shoes, danced between rows of rotting fruit like a drunk forest spirit. I remember standing there, not saying a word, convinced for a moment that I didn't know her at all, and terrified by how much I still wanted her. I never told anyone that. Not a soul. It was my memory. Mine alone. And now it was printed on a diner napkin in my locked bathroom. That night, I turned off the fridge. The hum was making me nervous. The apartment was too quiet, too loud, too still, too everything. I started talking to myself just to break up the silence. Just whispers at first. Then sentences. Then entire conversations. I made up people. I gave them names. Gave them stories. Because the only thing worse than losing your mind is losing it alone. I didn't sleep. Again. But I must have blacked out at some point, because when I woke up, the barricade was gone. The dresser pushed aside. The couch rolled back. The front door wide open. And on the floor, right where the tulip used to be, was something else. A cassette tape. No label. Just a single word scratched into the plastic. Play. I held the cassette between my palms for a long time, feeling its weight as if it were alive. No one uses tapes anymore. You can't even buy them at most stores. That's what made it worse. She'd gone out of her way to find something obsolete, something tactile, something that forced me to hold it and feel the edges cut into my skin. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I didn't own a player anymore, but the pawn shop down the block had one in the window, a cracked plastic thing with a sticker that read, "Works sometimes." I bought it with cash, the old bills folded so tight they smelled like my pocket. The man behind the counter didn't look at me twice. I didn't take the player back to the apartment. I sat on the fire escape, the steel cold even through my jeans, the cassette player balanced on my knees like a ritual object. For a long time, I just stared at it. My stomach was tight and sour, my throat dry. Every part of me wanted to throw it into the alley and walk away. But some ugly, magnetic part of me needed to know what she'd done this time. So I pressed play. At first there was just hiss. Old tape hiss, like ocean surf through a bad speaker. Then a voice. Not her voice. A woman's voice, yes, but wrong in the way a reflection is wrong when the mirror's warped. The cadence was too slow. The vowels stretched. It felt like someone imitating her from memory, getting it mostly right, but missing the pulse of it. "Lowell," it said, "you're not invisible." That was it. Nothing else. Just that sentence, repeated 3 times, each time slower, softer, like a lullaby. Then silence, followed by the faintest sound of something dripping. Not water. Something thicker. I stopped the tape. I couldn't breathe. My knees were trembling against the iron bars. Across the street a man was walking a dog, oblivious. The dog looked up at me once, just once, as if it could smell whatever this was clinging to my skin. I rewound. Played it again. Same thing. "Lowell, you're not invisible." My name in a stranger's mouth. The dripping. Silence. I snapped the tape out and hurled it as far as I could. It clattered off the brick of the opposite building and fell out of sight. But the sound didn't stop. The dripping, steady, patient, kept echoing in my ears. For a moment, I thought it was the fire escape leaking, but when I looked down at my hands, my palms were wet. Not with water, not with blood, with something clear, slick, odorless, like condensation that shouldn't be there. I wiped my hands on my jeans. It left no stain, but the feeling lingered, sticky as guilt. I climbed back inside, slammed the window shut, locked it, drew the blinds. I tore through the apartment looking for any other messages, behind picture frames, under the mattress, inside drawers. Nothing. Just my heartbeat hammering against my ribs. That's when my phone rang. I haven't had a phone in almost a year, but it was ringing. On my kitchen counter. A cheap flip phone, exactly like the one I'd thrown in a river 2 states away, buzzing now as if nothing had happened. The screen lit up with a number I didn't recognize. No area code, just a string of zeros. I stared at it. Let it ring. It rang 11 times, then stopped. When it stopped, the silence was heavier than before. And on the counter next to the phone was the cassette. Whole. Unbroken. Dry. It had a new word scratched into the plastic. Again. I don't remember sleeping, but sometime after the phone stopped ringing, the world tilted. When I opened my eyes, the light was wrong again, gray and green like aquarium water. My couch was no longer against the door. It wasn't even facing the same direction. The cassette lay on the floor, this time cracked in half, its brown tape ribbons spilling out like intestines. The word, again, had been scratched deeper into the plastic until it tore through. There was no flip phone on the counter anymore, just a faint rectangular outline where dust had been wiped away. For the first time since I left her, I felt a clean blade of panic cut through the numbness. She wasn't just finding me. She was inside my space, rearranging it, testing how far she could push before I broke. I had moved halfway across the country, changed my name on paper, disappeared into the kind of places that don't show up on maps. And yet she was here, inside my apartment, inside my head, using memories only I owned. I tried to call the landlord, but realized I didn't have his number, didn't even know his name. I'd paid cash to a man at a bus station, and a week later the keys arrived in an envelope with no return address. The whole point was to be untraceable. And now, as I pressed my palm to the wall for balance, the plaster under my hand shifted, just slightly, like someone breathing on the other side. I yanked my hand back and stared. It looked normal. White paint, a hairline crack. But I could still feel it, the slow inhale and exhale. I packed my bag. Not clothes this time. Papers, scraps, anything with her handwriting on it. The tulips petals I'd kept in a jar. The napkin from the diner. The photo of the hallway. The cracked cassette. I threw them into the duffel like evidence of a crime only I'd witnessed. I was ready to run again. But then, as I zipped the bag, the TV turned on by itself. Static filled the room. Not the white noise kind. A deep, rolling static like ocean thunder. The screen flickered, then stabilized on an image that made my throat close. It was me, sitting on the fire escape the night I played the tape. From a camera angle that didn't exist. She'd been filming me. All along. Then the static cleared and her face appeared. Not Liv. A recording. She looked older, thinner, her hair damp against her cheeks. She wasn't smiling. Her eyes didn't move the way they used to. They fixed on me like she could see me through the screen. "Lowell," she said, and the sound of my name almost knocked me over. "Stop running. You think you left me, but you're still inside what I built. You always were." She blinked once, slow, like a reptile. "Come back to the orchard, or I'll bring the orchard to you." The screen went black. The static died. The room was silent except for my own breath, harsh and ragged. I didn't believe in ghosts. I didn't believe in curses. I believed in her, and she was worse than all of them. I slid down the wall to the floor, clutching my bag. The apartment felt smaller than ever, like it was folding around me. I thought about the orchard, about her dancing barefoot under rotting apples, about the day I realized she could make me follow her anywhere. I had left her, changed everything, burned bridges, erased myself. And yet, here she was, pulling at the strings like I'd never gone. I whispered to the empty room, "What do you want from me?" My voice cracked. My hands were shaking. And for the first time since disappearing, I felt the unmistakable sense that I was no longer alone. Behind me, something exhaled. I didn't pack a second bag. There was no time. I didn't care. Everything I needed was already inside me. Paranoia, guilt, whatever sick tether she'd left behind in my head. I stuffed the orchard note into my jacket and walked out before the apartment could breathe again. Something was wrong with the air in that place. Too damp. Too heavy. Like it remembered things I didn't give it permission to remember. I didn't take a car. Didn't call anyone. I just walked until my feet stopped hurting, until the streets turned from neon to rust, until the city started to thin and the trees took over. I didn't know where I was going, not exactly, but I kept seeing flashes of that day. The orchard, the soft crunch of dirt under her heels, the way the light filtered through her hair like it was trying to escape her scalp. The smell of dead apples and early frost. I followed that smell. It was real in my head. Too real not to exist somewhere. At some point I must have blacked out because when I looked up, the orchard was just there. Not similar. Not close. Not a metaphor. It was the exact same orchard from that day, down to the crooked fence post and the metal sign half rusted with the word private barely clinging to the nail. But it wasn't anywhere near where it used to be. This place had no highway, no barn, no road, just trees and rot and air that didn't move right. I climbed over the gate. The wood moaned beneath my weight like it remembered me. Inside, the trees were taller than I remembered. Twisted. Their trunks had split in odd directions, as if they'd grown around something invisible. The apples were blackened and soft, hanging low like swollen wounds. Some had already fallen and melted into the soil. The air smelled like vinegar and sugar and iron. And somewhere in the middle of it, I heard her laugh. Not out loud, not echoing from the trees, but in my head, as clear as if she were standing behind me, whispering through her teeth, "You made it." I kept walking, deeper, past the point where the light changed, past the point where the orchard started to fold in on itself like a looped memory. The deeper I went, the more impossible things became. I found a scarf I'd lost 3 years ago, a receipt from a hotel we stayed at on our first road trip, a mug with her lipstick stain, and then, God help me, I found a Polaroid of myself sleeping, face down, same clothes I wore now, same cut on my hand from bumping the cabinet yesterday. I should have run, but I didn't. Instead, I reached the center clearing, where the earth was bare, the grass worn down to dirt. And there she stood, Mina, but it wasn't her. Or it was, but not how I remembered. Her skin was pale in that wrong light kind of way, like she was lit from underneath. Her hair was pulled back into a braid she never wore in real life, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her arms were crossed in front of her like she was waiting in line at a grocery store, not haunting a man through time. "You never let me finish," she said, almost bored. I didn't speak. My mouth wouldn't move. "I tried to tell you," she continued. "You left before I could explain. And when someone doesn't let you explain, they give you no choice. That was when I saw it. Behind her, a second figure. Half shadow, half flesh, taller, unmoving, watching. My brain refused to make sense of it. My eyes blurred, but Mina didn't seem afraid. She stepped aside like she was making room for something that had been there all along. "You can't just disappear, Lowell," she whispered, stepping closer. "You made promises, and promises rot when you bury them." I tried to speak, but something was in my throat. Something heavy, something that tasted like dust and ink. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I just need you to listen." And then, with a voice that didn't belong to her, "Not completely," she said, "close your eyes." I did. Because even after all this time, even after the betrayal, the tapes, the notes, the hallucinations, the orchard, I still couldn't say no to her. And the moment I closed my eyes, I remembered everything she never told me. I stood in that orchard for what felt like hours with my eyes shut, surrounded by silence so thick it pressed into my ribs like a second heartbeat. Her hand, fingertips on my wrist, like she was checking if I was still alive. And in that second, I remembered what it felt like to trust her. Not the woman she became, the one from before, the one I loved without caution, the one who would take photos of her shadow instead of her face, the one who used to read the back of cereal boxes out loud like it was poetry. That version. I opened my eyes, and she was gone. No figure, no shadow, no orchard. I was standing on a hill in the middle of a field. The sky was clean. The trees were real. A road curved in the distance. The wind moved like wind should. The orchard, the haunted place, the looping memory, the nightmare I kept feeding, wasn't there. It had never been there. Not really. But something else was. On the grass in front of me sat a small box. Wooden. Familiar. Inside was everything I'd been carrying. The napkin, the picture, the petals, the cassette, all neatly folded and still. On top was one more note, scribbled in hurried, imperfect handwriting. "This is yours now. Let it rot somewhere safe." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I laughed. A broken, wheezing laugh that turned into real laughter, ugly and honest. I sat down in the grass, under the sun, with that little box of ghosts and let the quiet settle around me like a blanket that finally fit. My hands stopped shaking. My chest loosened. I was still alone, but not haunted. Not anymore. I stayed on that hill until the sky turned gold. Then I stood up, left the box behind, and walked toward the road. I didn't need to go back. Not to the apartment. Not to her. Not to the version of me that never asked why. For the first time since disappearing, I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I was free. And I was finally mine again.